Hello, everyone. My name is John Hewko, and I'm the General Secretary of Rotary International, and I'm happy to welcome you to the very first episode of Rotary Responds Live. Every Wednesday for the next several weeks, we'll talk with leaders from Rotary World and beyond on how they are staying connected and responding to the COVID-19 pandemic in their community. We'd love to hear from you too. So please let us know where you're watching from in the comments and how you're continuing to make an impact during this time of social distancing. Now, our guest for our first episode is someone who has inspired us to connect the world. And so let me welcome Rotary International President, Mark Maloney. Mark?
Hello, John. It's great to see you today. You know, I think I see you more here on Zoom and Facebook Live and other virtual platforms than when we were both coming into the office at one Rotary Center. But it's great to be here today to join Rotarians from around the world and to just talk a little bit about what's happening in Rotary during these unusual times.
Well, again, Mark, it's great to have you here to our inaugural event. Maybe perhaps we can start by just giving us a sense of kind of what you and Gay are up to and how you're adjusting to the new situation given the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, Gay and I are adjusting very well. Thank you, John. But we are living an unusual life for a Rotary International president. It's not like I'm keeping a number on the side on the wall by my bed, but 65 nights in my own home in a row. And I think that sets a new record for a Rotary International president. So we are here in Decatur, Alabama. We do have the good fortune to have our law office, which is just 6 blocks from our home. And it's a very small law firm, very few people, so we can socially distance in a large, older building. And so we are just moving back and forth from our home to the office. And I am actually coming to you today from my law office in Decatur. But we're making the adjustments, lots of virtual meetings. I'm probably making contact with more Rotarians from around the world now than I would have when I was greeting them face to face.
Well, you know, you just mentioned how connected you really are with. Maybe give us a sense of your day and how you stay connected to our fellow Rotarians in this time when we're all kind of sheltering in place.
Well, the virtual platforms are an excellent opportunity to connect with Rotarians. And I just virtually every day of the week, I have Zoom meetings. In fact, this morning, I started at 7 o'clock in the morning at my wife's Rotary Club meeting because my vice president from Nigeria was the speaker. But I couldn't stay on for the whole meeting because I already had a commitment to be with Rotarians in Western Australia beginning at 7:30. And of course, it was 8:30 in the evening there for them. And so I was able to connect with Rotarians. Yesterday, I connected with Rotarians in Denmark. And we used a different platform other than Zoom. And for some reason, I could not connect. But we are resourceful Rotarians. So Trustee Perhoyen was my host. I called him on FaceTime using my iPhone. He held up his phone to the camera of his computer, and I spoke to the Rotarians in Denmark through the phone, through his computer. We made it work.
Right. Well, and I think your experience really in some ways sort of is an example of, you know, despite the fact that we're living through these really difficult times, and they are difficult, there's no doubt about it. I think for Rotary, this really is an opportunity to kind of embrace technology perhaps in a way that we haven't before, to stay connected in a way that perhaps we weren't anticipating. And so the sort of necessity is the mother of invention. And I think your experience and the experience many of us are facing is really it demonstrates that, you know, we can take advantage of the situation and perhaps do things a little differently and take our organization even greater heights. So how do you see Rotary's role in these challenging times of COVID-19?
Well, there's 2 points I'd like to make. The number one point is we must engage our members. We must do everything that we can to engage our members, and we must make sure that clubs are meeting virtually and that Rotarians are connecting, and we need to reach out to those Rotarians who are not connecting. You know, if they're members of our club and they're not showing up, we need to make that connection. And the second thing is that we must maintain our service. Granted, we can't do it in the usual way, but we have opportunities. We've seen all over the world Rotarians answering the call to provide pandemic relief. For example, the 13 governors of the 13 Rotary districts in Italy have banded together and done outstanding work in providing sophisticated triage equipment to 28 hospitals from the length and breadth of the country. Really, Rotarians are making a difference, and the Rotary Foundation has really stepped up to support Rotarians in this effort. Well, but if I may add, sorry to interrupt you, John.
No, sure.
But, you know, as you said, we must take advantage. Every dark cloud, and this pandemic is a dark cloud, has a silver lining. And supposedly Winston Churchill said, I'm not sure that he actually did, but I'll use the quote anyway, never waste a good crisis. Whether he said it or not, it's words that we need to take to heart. And we need Rotarians all over the world to try innovative ideas, and those that are successful to share them with Rotary International, with their club and district support teams, with their Rotary coordinators, with their public image coordinators, so that we can share these successful opportunities. And I think, you know, there is a demographic out there that operates virtually all the time. That may be unfamiliar for someone of my age and vintage, but they operated virtually long before this. And hopefully they can see that Rotarians are willing to adapt, and that they can carve out their own segment, their own area within Rotary to operate in a virtual way. And hopefully we can make greater inroads in attracting this younger demographic to membership in Rotary.
No, and I think one of the, you know, as you mentioned, we're seeing, anecdotally at least, that clubs are more connected than ever. We hear stories of clubs who, you know, 50% of our members would normally come to meetings. Now we're getting 90% attendance. But I also suspect there may be clubs out there that might not be as active as one would like. Do you have any thoughts on that, and any sort of calls to action to the Rotary community on that score?
Well, as I said earlier, member engagement is the number one service we can provide at this time. We need to remember that Rotary was founded on the basis of networking. Paul Harris was looking for a network, and we need to make sure that Rotary clubs around the world are still providing that network. If your club is meeting virtually, congratulations, thank you. But if you looked at that participant list in the panel on the Zoom program or whatever virtual platform you're using, who's not there? Who's not showing up week after week at your virtual meeting? Reach out to that individual. Make sure that individual realizes that they are valued, that they're missed, and that they're valued, and that you want them to rejoin with the group. And if you have a neighboring club, or if you're a district leader and you know that a particular club or clubs in your district or in your neighborhood is not meeting, reach out to them. Provide them with the tools, provide them with mentorship. You know, even I know how to set up a Zoom meeting now. And if Mark Maloney can do it, almost anybody can do it. And so to me, member engagement is the number one priority right now. That is, you know, may not think of that as a service project, but it is a service so that Rotary will continue to thrive as we come out of this pandemic.
Yeah. Well, one of the sort of the highlights in the Rotary year is our annual convention that we generally hold in May and June. And unfortunately, given the crisis, you had to make the difficult decision of canceling this year's convention in Honolulu. But we're now in the process of developing a first ever virtual convention. So perhaps give our listeners a little bit of a preview as to the virtual convention and where that all stands.
Well, John, you're right. That was one of the toughest decisions I've ever made. I mean, it got me right here. On Friday, I'm thinking, well, we might still have the convention, but by Monday of that weekend in March, it was clear to me that we could not. But we have made the pivot, and we're going to take some of the great programming that we had planned for the Honolulu convention and put it into the first ever virtual convention. And I think I've come up with the longest name for a convention ever. Now more than ever, Rotary connects the world, the 2020 Rotary Virtual Convention. And I ask all Rotarians to save the dates, to mark their calendars for Saturday, June 20 through Friday, June 26. And on Saturday and Sunday, we will have general sessions. And on Monday through Friday, we will have breakout sessions. Go to riconvention.org for information about the schedule. Right now, it's a schedule at a glance posted there, but more information will be forthcoming. The topics of the breakout sessions, eventually how to register. There will be no fee to register, but in order to get onto the platform, it will be necessary to sign up in advance. And John, every president wants to have the largest or best Rotary convention ever. Well, we're not going to be in person. We're not going to be on the sandy beaches of Honolulu, but I want this to be the largest Rotary convention ever. Back in 2004, we had more than 45,000 registrants at the convention in Osaka, Japan, back when Jonathan Majiagbe was the president of Rotary International. And I want to break that record. Oh, it might be cheating a little bit for everybody to attend the convention from their home, but let's say this was the biggest Rotary convention ever in Rotary history.
All right. Well, Rotary World, you heard it straight from the president. Let's see if we can break that Osaka record. And another thing, as part of the cancellation of the Honolulu convention, all the registrants will get their registration fees returned in full. However, there is an opportunity if you want to direct your refund to the COVID disaster response fund. So I would make an appeal to those Rotarians out there who are so inclined to please consider giving your refund to the COVID response fund to help victims of this terrible tragedy around the world. So, President Mark, you got 1 month remaining in your presidential year. What have you kind of learned in your travels and sort of leading our organization?
Rotary in its public persona, in its attitude, differs a great deal around the world. In some places, it's very formal. Meetings are very formal. Everyone comes in suit and tie or dressed to the nines. And in other places, it's much more casual. But no matter whether it's formal or casual or any other characteristic, the service that Rotarians provide is just mind-boggling. The most impressive thing that Gay and I have seen is the level of service around the world. And the types of projects differ. And in some countries, in more developed countries, Rotary is providing what you might call additional service, addressing specific problems that are not addressed by government agencies and other support groups. But in some countries of the world, like Guatemala and India, Rotary can be the social safety net. They are the fabric that provides the safety net. There are entire cities in Guatemala that have been adopted by Rotary clubs. And I have been amazed at the number of hospitals in India that are actually operated by trusts set up by Rotary clubs. And if it were not for those Rotary clubs, those hospitals would not exist. We don't think of that in the United States, that Rotary would operate a hospital. But the service that Rotarians provide all over the world, that is what has impressed Gay and me the most in our travels.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us for this first episode of Rotary Responds Live. It's really inspiring to hear from you on how we, can stay connected and respond to COVID-19, really in a time when the world needs Rotary more than ever. So perhaps in closing, could you maybe just offer one piece of advice? If you had one piece of advice to offer our members right now, what would that be?
I'd like to come back to a point that I raised earlier, and that is member engagement, participant engagement. Let's make sure that that if your club is meeting virtually, that all of the members have the opportunity, and that you're reaching out to them to make sure that they participate, or that they at least know that they're missed. And for those clubs that aren't meeting, neighboring clubs, district officers, show them how easy it is to have a virtual meeting, because it is critically important that we maintain that connection with all Rotarians, because Rotary connects the world.
It sure does. So thank you again, Mark. And listen, I want to thank our viewers for joining us from around the globe and sharing how they're taking action in their communities. We'll be back next week for another episode of Rotary Responds Live, when we will welcome Shelterbox CEO Sanj Srikanthan. So go to the Rotary Responds Live Facebook event page for more info, share it with your friends, and I'll see all of you next week.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Mark.